Hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Check my community page for said updates and polls. I was up watching the interview room and my mind was twirling, um, listening to the content. The live is still going on at the present moment. And I said, let me make a quick live because I would like to get things out, when it's on my mind so I don't forget. This mask is a balacava type mask that is believed worn by KOHBERGER on the morning of November 13th in the Idaho Forest Slangs. Evidence shows that he purchased, or someone on the Amazon family account purchased this type of mask. Now, naturally, the family could say, well, I bought it. But where there's going to be a problem if one of these people cannot produce the mask. So who's going to go out on a limb and say, I purchased this mask, but I don't have it? Then first thing, state defense will say, well, why don't you have it? What happened to it? Hello, this guy. Why don't you have it? Same thing with the knife, the sheath, the knife sharpener. The sheath was left behind with his DNA on it, but where's the knife and the sharpener? So naturally, I'm assuming the state has more evidence against Mr. KOHBERGER. And as I said in my commentary on my community page, I believe the noose is tightening tight around the neck of BK. Because as I've always said, when it comes to true crime, imagine what you don't know, okay? So this mask was purchased January of 2022. He landed sometime on the campus of Washington State, spring, summer of 2022. There's evidentiary material data showing he stalked these young ladies, their home, and we're now talking about at least 14 times he touched down at this property, okay? So you add all that, including what we don't know the state has, and it does not look good in his favor. That's why Eddie Taylor doesn't want anything shown in court because she knows it doesn't look good. And some could be considered circumstantial, but it's highly circumstantial, and there's a difference. Okay, so you look at this mask, you have to ask yourself, it's black, it's dark, probably not a typical mask that a woman would order for herself, buy for herself. It would be something a man would buy or someone who's mischievous and up to no good. Stay woke, everybody, okay? Stay woke. So we're going to ask the ultimate question. When he purchased the mask, January of 2022, or March 2022, so I'm getting a little sidetracked. Did he already have a target? Hello, Glitters Go. Hello, JH. Did he have a target when he bought this in the winter of 2022? Because the children were murdered, near the end of the year, November 13th, that late morning. So did he already have a target, or he knew he was going to kill someone? So what will data show pertaining to his first contact with a victim or victims? Data following them, liking a picture, post. What will be the first date of KOHBERGER versus the targets in the house? Because that's going to be relevant to this mask. Now, the content I heard tonight says he bought a replacement. I thought they said he was searching in the information I got earlier, but watching the interview room, they're saying on that network that he purchased another knife. So I don't know if that's true or not. So searching, bought, it still doesn't look good. As I had said before in my commentary pertaining to the roommates, when you say, oh, well, the children couldn't be saved, KOHBERGER was free a whole month and a half. Let's be exact. The 13th versus the end of December is a month and a half. That's enough time to find a new target. Stay woke, everybody. So do the math. Mask, January, sheath knife, what, March? It's only 2 months. It's only 2 months apart. So it looks like he was getting himself psyched up to exact harm, in my opinion. Then you factor in the summer 2022, he's riding every day over to Idaho, 15 minutes away from Washington State, stalking this house, stalking these victims. Don't know if he's been inside. Don't know if he just looked at the layout online. But he's stalking this house, stalking the inhabitants of the house. And obviously he didn't care about who was going to be there. He had to have known they had company, friends, male friends. But he knew he was going to be the victor. I want everyone to really think about what I'm saying, okay? He's cocky, he's arrogant. He wants to be in control. He wants to have what he has never had, which is control of the situation. And that's normal for people who have lived trauma, okay? Being bullied, mistreated by people, friends, as a child, children. You want control of what you never had, which was your existence. So I can see how this would be fascinating to Mr. Kohlberger. Not saying it's right, of course. He wanted control. The fact that he would go to a house that's got nothing but cars sitting in the driveway. Stay woke now. That means he knew in his head, or he thought, I'm coming out of here unscathed. It's very deep if you really think about it. Because that means this person is this cocky to say to himself, herself, I'm going in this house to kill people and I'm coming out the victor. And nobody's going to know who I am and that I did this. And then we have the infamous selfie, thumbs up, just like Mr. Ted Bundy. Whoa, shut your mouth. Was this his idol? Possibly. Studying him? Possibly. Studying serial killers? Of course. I'm coming after Victor. And he did come out for 1.5 months. And what people need to think about is the fact that he probably was ready for a new target. In that selfie, he looks pale as a ghost, white as snow, fleshy, fresh from a shower. But he, to me, was clammy looking. Knuckles looking strange, fingers look like they got marks on them. Very, very bizarre photograph if you're paying attention. But he didn't care, you see. I'm the victor. That's what the thumbs up is about. So will we get information from the state that shows a timeline of the victims being stalked close to proximity of the purchase of this mask and also the knife, the sheath, and the sharpener? Because then you got to also tie that into when he applied to school or acceptance into Washington State. Did he know by January he was already accepted into Washington State? March, he knew he was accepted into Washington State. See, we need to know that in order to tie it in to the victims at 1122 King Road. Okay? Tied in. Did he already, was he already accepted to Washington State in January 2022, March 2022? Because if so, this is even scarier than thought. Okay? Because we got to know when he chose a target, number one. What is the correlation between the targets, and the purchases of this mask, the knife sheath, the sheath, and the sharpener? Put it together. Control. This is what this crime is about. I need what I never had. They laughed at me. They bullied me. I was insecure. I didn't like myself. I didn't like guys. I didn't like girls. I didn't like anybody. Know-it-all, narcissist. I need control. And as you listen to the interview room and all the paperwork of his laying out the scene of a crime and what he would and would not do. They're saying he's talking in first person. Well, as I said, was the paperwork for first person addressing or saying, what would the perpetrator do? And he slipped up and said, I don't know. I was just trying to listen in. Before I check out of here, this is going to be a very quick live. I'm going to talk about the Queen's connection to murder. Okay? If you watch this network long enough, you will know I have shared many stories with you all pertaining to my life, the people that I've met along my journey. So I'm going to share something with you to show you you don't know people, and you need to be very careful about the company you keep and talking to people, liking people, riding with people, putting people in your car, bringing people into your home. This was on my mind tonight. James Perry. This person was in the Queen's automobile early part summer of 2022. He's been charged with murder. Okay? Let's go back. Search for suspect ongoing after fatal East Knoxville shooting on Valentine's Day. This was uploaded last year, March 12, 2024. An investigation is underway into a deadly shooting that took place late Valentine's Day. A search for the suspect is ongoing. According to the Knoxville Police Department, officers were dispatched to 2200 block of McCullough Avenue. Around 11 p.m. on February 14th, on-scene officers found a man who had been shot at least once. He was pronounced dead at the scene. The victim has been identified as Sherwin Harris, 50. KPD announced Monday that James Perry III, 40, has been charged with manslaughter, and weapons offenses in connection to the shooting efforts remain ongoing to locate Perry. Anyone who has information, whereabouts, to ask to contact East Tennessee Valley Crime Stoppers. It says KPD shared that based on preliminary findings, Harris and the suspect were involved in an altercation at the Magnolia Cafe. And that is the place where you have seen Queen go on Wednesday nights. The little place where we go get chicken wings, drinks. This is where these two allegedly had an altercation. This confrontation continued at the lounge at 2223 McCullough Avenue. This is another place. They call it Stu's place. I'm not going to mention his last name, but anyway, he had this business at one time. At some point during the argument, the suspect shot Harris and left the scene before officers arrived, according to KPD. James Perry III is out on bond. Okay? Mr. Perry is out on bond. Well, there was a young man that I know of. He was friends with this person. He was friends mainly with this man's uncle because he was here visiting from Michigan, still here, staying with that uncle, still staying there from my understanding, okay? Naturally, he's going to still be there because he's going to be going to trial for murder. So I gave these two a ride to the store, get something to drink, eat. The point I'm trying to make to you is the obvious. When I saw this story break, I saw the picture. The first thing I said was, oh, that person looks familiar. I've talked to this person. I've given a ride to this person. This person's been in my car alongside somebody else that I knew of. And even to this day, the person who was affiliated with him was like, oh, yeah, his uncle says he's going to get off, blah, blah, blah. The other guy was in the wrong. And I was like, well, the other guy, I've seen him out. I've never seen him loud, talk crazy, rude, obnoxious, any of that. But this motherfucker here, I have seen loud, rude. Talking to one businessman one night when I first met him. He was outside a club arguing with the owner because the owner wanted to charge $5 to get into the club in order to order food. And this buffoon here wanted to go on and on about $5. I get it. Nobody wants to pay to order food. But the point is, what is it to argue about? So all that came back in my mind when I saw this picture as a suspect in the murder of Mr. Sherwin. I said, oh, that's that loudmouth I met summer 2022. And he's arguing about paying $5 to get into a club to order food. And even recently, this young man who I've known, older, he's older, he was like, well, Yeah, he was wanting to get in and order food. He shouldn't be charging $5, blah, 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 petty shit. I was like, what do you know about it? I said, oh, that's the version he gave you? I said, it doesn't matter. That's the man's club. You either like the rules or you don't. The point is, he's a loudmouth. I said, and I could see him talking loud at the Magnolia Cafe, then going over to Stu's place, talking loud, and then an argument ensuing, which led him to murder Mr. Sherwin. I said, because the times I've seen Mr. Sherwin out, who is no longer alive, I've never seen him loud talking, boisterous, screaming, hollering, fighting people. Only this little black buzzard from Michigan, if you can see where I'm going. So it's interesting tonight listening to the interview room talking about true crime, Kohlberger and his mask and data, to know that a murderer was in my car and got a ride to the store. The fact that before that, we stood out in a public parking lot while he went on and on and on about $5 that a man wanted him and patrons to pay in order to walk into his club to order food. And now here we are. One's dead, and this son of a bitch is free on bond until trial. And let my so-called associate say, oh, I think he's going to get off. His uncle says he's going to get off. It was self-defense, was it? Because I've seen this thing in live action. He's a hot wire. He has a lot of mouth. He's one of those that likes to talk off, pop off, talk crazy, loud talk. So it didn't shock me when I heard he was the suspect that Nassau police was looking for in Sherwin's death. And those people are still mourning Mr. Sherwin. And I do know some of the family members. And they are still devastated by his murder. Now, naturally, Queen was not there when this crime took place. But I go by energy. And if my energy tells me that the suspect is a loudmouth and loud and rude and obnoxious, like to talk crazy, my spirit's telling me more than likely he's probably in the wrong. I could be wrong, but I'm just saying. You don't know people. You have no idea the people you are socializing with, talking with, standing beside. No different than this crime here. These children went to school. This man was grading their papers. He was around them. He was rude to some of them, hard, graded them hard. They didn't know him, Mr. Kohlberger. But he changed his demeanor after the murder of those kids. Put it together. Because he was the victor. He got what he wanted. So now he's cool as a cucumber. He's relaxed. Okay? That's my first story. Okay? Pertaining to true crime. I'm going to bring you another quick story. Then I'm going to check out of here. One second, everybody. Trying to get everything together. Get my volume and everything together. April 29th, 2024. This video posted pertaining to Mr. Chad Carr. Haven't heard anything recently pertaining to the disappearance of Mr. Carr. When I get an update, I will surely bring it to you all. Hello, Amanda. Trying to pull this article up. This iPad is giving me hell. I'm circling. I'm going to take you to Anderson County now. Well, it doesn't want to play for some reason.
County, Roane County line, May 1st, 2021, the day before he disappeared. Since then, we've seen year after year how those who care about him work to keep Carr's name and picture in front of the public, hoping someone will share what happened. WATE 6 on Your Side reporter Ella Wales talked with his family, who isn't giving up hope.
Bo, Thursday will mark 3 years since Carr was reported missing. For his family, every day is a waiting game, waiting for answers that still haven't come. This is where Chadwick Carr was last seen, the Foundation House on Dutch Valley Road in Anderson County. That was May 1st, 2021.
Sorry about that.
It is still
Wait a minute.
a tough pill to swallow.
Oh, Lord. I should know that would jump off. Sorry about that, everybody. Me and this device, we don't get along well. I don't know why it's... Hold on. Oh, Lordy. Hello, Amanda. I'm buffering, that's the problem.
We're coming up on 3 years now since the last time anyone saw Chadwick Carr.
I don't know. It won't hold.
With deep roots in
well,
the East Tennessee community,
I don't know.
the boxing
For some
partnership
reason,
understands
she
the
don't
unique
want,
challenges of our road players. When you choose us,
she don't want to hold.
attorneys you can trust. Call the Carr Rep.
This is absolutely ridiculous. I don't know what is wrong with this screen. I'm just going to show his picture because it's trying to show you the information. It's not working out, so hold on. It's making it too difficult. Dateline did a special on Mr. Carr, okay? This is my story number 2. He was at the Foundation House, Oliver Springs, a place where you go to get help for drug abuse. He was 32 at that time, 5'9", 230 pounds. William D. Carr. I believe that's 1105 Dutch Valley Road. The reason why I'm showing you this information, similar to the information I just showed you about Mr. Perry. Chad Carr, I did not know Chad Carr. I found his story in 2021 through the Newsbreak app. And as most of you know, the Queen has a very discerning spirit. I can hear certain conversations. I can hear a name, a place. It'll jog my memory to something somebody has said, something I've seen, something I've heard. And that's what happened with the case of Mr. Carr missing from this Foundation House. I read the article and all I saw was Dutch Valley Road, and that's what got my interest up, piqued my interest, because I know I had spoken to someone who called me one night saying they needed a ride from Dutch Valley Road after 11 p.m. And my spirit said, Queen, the two are connected. The disappearance of this man and the person calling you, asking you to pick them up So the person that I was talking to was a black male, and I didn't really know what was going on. I just put two and two together from the article of Chad Carr missing. And I told the black male the next time I talked to him, I said, do you know Chad Carr? And so he said, who? I said, a Chad Carr, black guy, bald head, because he asked me, describe him. When I described him to him, he hung up on me and blocked my number. I've told people this story before. Why would you block my number? You blocked my number because you were there the night Chad went missing. Okay? And how I know that you were there is that when I went to Facebook to look at Chad's last picture, which was taken the same day, I zoomed in on the photograph. Thank God for hitting that camera, hitting that screen. You can zoom in on a picture just by touching the screen. I saw your name on the bulletin board, which showed me that you lived there at the time of Chad's disappearance. And more than likely, you know exactly what happened to Chad Carr. Chad is still missing, and it is now 2025. We're approaching April. So he went missing May of 2021. And I don't know if you participated in the murder or death of this man, but you know something. And the fact that you blocked me told me everything I needed to know. And the fact that it was probably 2 weeks beforehand, you were asking me to get you out of this place, but you wouldn't tell me where you were. All that was bizarre to me even then. Middle of the night, you're saying, hey, come get me, come get me, come get me. And I was like, what's wrong? What's the problem? And then it wasn't until weeks later when this story broke, I knew exactly where you were. You were at a halfway house, rehabilitation place, whatever you want to call it. Really, to me, it's just an adult daycare for drug addicts. I said that. Mr. Carr was not mandated by the court to go to this place. He went on his own to get himself clean, but there were rumors in the town, because I did a little background work, because I went out there. Please check out my older content where the Queen goes out to the Foundation House and films from across the street, across from the railroad tracks. I was very nervous, very scared. I should not have been out there by myself because to me, that's no man's land. If there are black people that live out in those parts, it's not me, if you get my drift. And I did end up getting lost out there trying to find the house because I passed the road where I saw the sign and I kept driving like a fool and I ended up on top of a ridge one way in. And let me tell you something, I was literally sweating driving my car on that one-way road. And I had no connection. So if something had happened to me, got stranded, I was on my own. And the first thing I thought of, could Chad be back here? Don't. Because he hasn't been seen. And I think we can use better half to say, Mr. Carr is not alive. Mr. Carr is not alive. And I believe these men at this halfway house murdered him, including this guy who I met briefly. And he checked himself into this facility because I didn't know at the time when I met him that he had problems. But I know the last incident I had with him, he was acting bizarre and strange. And this goes to show you don't know people. So my advice in talking about true crime and people and circumstances such as this here, Mr. KOHBERGER, you need to be very careful of the company you keep. You need to be very careful talking to people, going places with people alone, bringing people to your home in your car. You have not had time to get to know them personally. This is how you end up in a very dire situation. Now, in the case of these children, we don't have any evidence that these kids knew Mr. KOHBERGER or hung with him, dated him. Just think he picked them out from pictures and decided to make them a target. But the point is, you don't know the day when your number will be called, if you get my drift. So those are my two connections to murder. Mr. Perry, I briefly met him. He's from Michigan. talked to him outside of a club. Then when I was talking to this one guy I was interested in, he was staying at the house where Mr. Perry was staying, or visited the house, whichsoever, and they needed a ride to the store. He got in my car. It was the summer of 2022. And then months later, going into the new year, kill someone. I need to say 2023, excuse me. 2023. So I'm getting my time mixed up. 2023, I met him. And then he had an altercation with Mr. Sherwin, February 2024. See, it's hard for me to keep up because I'm in 25. So forgive me. 2023 is when I met him. Happenstance, okay? Didn't know him from a can of paint, but I knew something about him I didn't like. He was a loudmouth. And eventually, he will be standing trial for the murder of this guy who's well known here in Knoxville, liked and loved by many people. Then my second situation, years before, Mr. Chad Carr. Didn't know Mr. Carr, but I did talk to someone close to Mr. Carr. I won't reveal who this person is as to preserve their safety, but they basically told me he was high on narcotics that same Sunday that he went missing. He had just bought a van the day before. If you looked at his Facebook page, he seemed, very confident, a bit cocky, and perhaps he had built bad blood at this foundation house. Now, there were many rumors about the white woman who owned it. I looked to Facebook where one white guy was saying some not so nice things about her, that she was connected to the police, the sheriff, that he was touched inappropriately in jail by her, which I don't understand that. I don't know if she worked at the jail system or something, but he was just saying she was someone you could not trust. And also the person who I talked to, who gave me information that Chad was inebriated on that Sunday. Chad did talk to this person about this same white woman who owns the foundation house at that time, and that perhaps she was interested in Mr. Carr. And maybe Mr. Carr was not interested, and something went down that night at the house. Maybe she put a bug in some of these guys' ears to do something to him. I don't know, but I know he's still missing. And I do believe that he's dead. I do not believe he's alive. I do not believe he's hiding out. Because let's be truthful, people who like being on social media, talking, laughing, making jokes, making lives, they're not the type of people to disappear on their own. That's common sense. When they like going live, showing themselves, taking pictures, they ain't just disappearing. Somebody got them gone. There's a difference. And I believe that's what happened with Mr. Carr. I believe there was bad blood at that foundation house. I believe maybe he ticked somebody off. They didn't like him. Could have been a robbery. I don't know because I haven't heard anything about what happened to his credit cards, debit cards, money. Haven't heard any of that. I heard all his things were left behind. One phone found in the grass, one flip-flop found. So I believe there was an altercation. And he also was talking to his sister at the time when the phone went dead. That was around 9:30 p.m. on a Sunday. So something happened to Mr. Carr. And I believe the men at this halfway house know exactly what happens to Mr. Carr. And I want to know why the Oliver Springs Police Department has not given us an update pertaining to Mr. Carr. I also heard from one of the young people in town that that house had been raided a month or so beforehand for drugs. So perhaps these guys were still using and or selling drugs from the halfway house. Maybe Mr. Carr was dibble-dabbling in drugs. Don't know. But the point is, he's not here. He's still missing. And I do believe he was murdered. And I believe a man that I met right before that, a couple weeks before that, I believe he knows something or possibly he's involved in the murder of Mr. Carr. Yes, I'm going to go out and say that I believe Mr. Carr was murdered. And the fact that this person, when I asked him about Mr. Carr and described him, the person blocked me. Hung up on me and blocked me. Now, why would you block me when you just asked me a few weeks ago to come pick you up from this said location? Stay woke, everybody. See, you don't know people. That's why I asked you all the question on the polls. Could you date and or marry a person who is convicted of homicide? Because many men who are locked up, women too, are allegedly dating and are married to people on the outside, and they are murderers, convicted murderers. And you're going to see that with Mr. KOHBERGER. He's going to have suitors. He's going to have women send him things right to him, want to visit, want to date, and also marry him, of course. Hell, one of the Menendez brothers, he was married. I don't think that relationship is on the up and up, but you understand what I'm saying. Then you have to ask your question, what type of person would want to date and or marry a convicted murderer times 2, 3, 4, 5? You get my drift. You don't know people. So every day you're walking out here talking to people, meeting people online, at work, wherever, you might want to do a little digging. You know who the hell you're talking to, who you're laying with, and God forbid, make children with. You don't know people. You don't know people at all. And another story, Mr. Black, talked about him a few years ago. That was what, 2022, August, I think. He was murdered, Oak Ridge, Tennessee. And that crime hasn't been solved either, which I think is very interesting. And I knew of Mr. Black. Some people feel like he was a hothead, disrespected a man. Perhaps that man murdered him. But that man says he didn't. And that man has not been charged in his murder. But whoever murdered Mr. Black, they were up close when they shot him to death. And we know that they couldn't have been standing near the steps of where he lived because he had these big foreign-looking dogs that probably would have ate you alive. So I'm assuming maybe the person shot him from across the fence. And people are known to stand out, congregate in that area on the sidewalk. Somebody would have seen the person standing out there with a gun, but nobody's talking. Why not? Is it perhaps the people were tired of this man, sick of him, hated him, and we're glad he was murdered? Could be. But somebody in that small town knows what happened to him. My other connection to murder. And as they say, a dead man tells no tales. You see, many people carry the secret to murder, and I've talked about that recently, pertaining to true crime. And especially with all these cases of children being unalive, missing, that there are people who do know what happened to the child, the grown-up, because people do pillow talk at some point, because the guilt eats away at them. And they tell somebody. And it's just a matter of if the person is going to come forward and tell authorities that, hey, Bob told me he killed that girl back in 19 such and such, 20 such and such. So as I keep saying to people about all these stories you keep hearing of pertaining to children, missing, dead, abused, adults, who's going to tell the story? That they know what happened to that person. And that's what's so damn scary, is that people are walking around holding the secret to abuse, mayhem, death, and have yet to come forward to tell law enforcement that they know what happened to a person. And that's scary as hell. And you're seeing that every day in true crime. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. People who say, I called the FBI, I called the sheriff, I called this agency, nobody got back, nobody called me back. And you're sitting here thinking, what the hell? Why not? murders going unsolved for 10, 20 years, and people have called to say, hey, somebody told me a story. Kind of like what Queen's doing right now. Somebody told me a story. And I can't even remember that guy's name. From the Foundation House. I met him briefly. Met him online. And I only put 2 and 2 together. That he was at the same house where Mr. Chad Carr was missing. Only because when I looked at the article, I saw Dutch Valley and a bell went off in my head. And I said, wait a minute. Somebody just called me saying they needed me to pick them up from the same address or Dutchtown Valley. And I just put the 2 and 2 together. And a lot of you probably would have never put that together, but Queen did, because I pay attention to what people say and what they don't say. And I'm going to be truthful with you. This so-called gift of discernment is scary as fuck. Because in order for me to put that together that quick, I'm telling you, it sent chills up my spine. Oh, he was at that house. Because all I had to do was Google the address. And that's how I put 2 and 2 together. I said, oh, this is a place for people who've been in trouble, people who've been on drugs. So then I realized that guy was there too. And then my spirit said, don't let it rest. Keep digging, Queen. So then I go to Facebook. And I pull up the last picture of Mr. Carr. And when I zoom into the photograph, I see the guy's name in the background on the bulletin board, which told me he was there when Chad went missing. And then when I called him to inquire about Mr. Carr, he hung up on me and blocked me, which told me everything I needed to know. You know exactly what happened to Chad Carr. And I do remember briefly speaking to, I believe, the sheriff in Oliver Springs about the case. And that was many moons ago, 2021. And if I'm not mistaken, I think I did mention to him that I talked to someone who may have information pertaining to what happened to Mr. Carr. Naturally, I never heard back from the sheriff. Nobody's ever called me back. But I think they know that Mr. Carr is not alive. And I think they know that someone at that house or more killed Mr. Carr and covered up his homicide. And I'm going to bet my bottom dollar that Mr. Carr is buried or discarded out there near that halfway house. Because his truck was left behind, his van, his keys, his money, everything allegedly, cards, wallet. So that means somebody had to take him off that property to dispose of his body. And if it's a collective effort, they probably took him in his own damn van, drove somewhere nearby, somewhere in those parts, dumped him and came back and parked his van and left it as if he wandered off. And I know he didn't wander off because his phone and his flip-flop was found in the grass, which would lead you to believe he got in a fight or was jumped unexpectedly, as his sister said. I was talking to him and the phone went dead because they jumped him. So there are several people who are in this facility. They know exactly what happened. And as I filmed from that house one evening, I got a sick feeling in my stomach. Filming that house, people were looking back at me across the road. And I feared for my safety because I felt like you shouldn't be out here, Queen, because there's nothing but men in this house. And if they can kill Mr. Carr, they can most definitely kill you. That's my commentary. Prayers for the Idaho 4. Prayers for justice for these kids. Prayers for Mr. Carr, that there's justice served in his case. And prayers for Mr. Sherwin, that there is justice in his murder. Like, share, subscribe, drop your comments below this video. Follow the Queen on the Newsbreak app. And if you'd like to donate to this great network, $Big Angie 129 Cash App. Stickers and chats are welcome during the live stream. Be very careful of the company you keep. Be careful of talking to people, period. It doesn't matter if it's online or wherever. Because what you need to understand is that people are people. Online doesn't really mean anything. If you're a dog, you're a dog. Online don't have nothing to do with it. If you're out here doing wrong, you're going to do wrong, whether you are on Facebook, IG, Snapchat, Yik Yak, date sites. You see where I'm going. Better figure out who you're talking to, who you're riding with, who you're working with, whose cars you're getting in, whose house you're going over, who you're sleeping with, who you're making children with. You don't know people. Prime example. Who knew that this guy, Mr. KOHBERGER, would be national news and accused of killing 4 college students in Idaho? Exactly. Exactly. Bad Blood is my movie for the weekend. Please check it out. Now playing free on Tubi. You have been listening to the Vault XL. Thank you. Have a good weekend, everybody.